Hi, so thanks for joining today. I wanted to let you know an update on buyer love letters. So buyer love letters are those letters that agents will submit, humanizing their buyer and submitting it with an offer. So we talked about these in the past and how I think that they absolutely put us in danger of fair housing violations. You are sharing details about your client as the buyer's agent that may or may not inadvertently cause them to be the victim of a fair housing violation. And you may or may not be inadvertently exposing the seller to being accused of a fair housing violation, whether that is or is not the case. So buyer love letters are something that the National Association of Realtors is frowning on. I frown on them. I'm here to tell you, I've done them for years. I did them for over a decade. They actually, as far as I know, work. But on all those transactions where I didn't get the deal, I wonder if they worked against me. And if I did actually accidentally share too much information about my buyers. So Oregon has now banned them. So the state of Oregon has said they are banned. You may not submit them. And I certainly see other states following suit. North Carolina has been on this topic for over a year now, stating that what is happening is no one is trying to expose themselves to a fair housing violation, but it is happening inadvertently or on purpose. So what you're thinking is going to help your buyer may actually be working against them or exposing everyone to a fair housing violation. So instead of a buyer love letter, they're just recommending you put your best offer possible forward. I understand that when there are competing offers, sometimes humanizing your buyer is the only thing you've got as an edge. So I would recommend that to the listing agent, you can verbally say things like, oh, they grew up in this neighborhood and are just really anxious to get back into the neighborhood. That's perfectly safe. You're not exposing any fair housing or protected class status when you say something like that. I just want you to be very deliberate about what you share about your buyers. And I don't want it to have to do with familial status, race, religious orientation, any of those protected class reasons, okay? We have to be careful about that. Fair housing is alive and well, and it should be because discrimination still happens, especially in real estate. So please, please make sure you're being very careful about that. I would recommend not using buyer love letters. I am positive there are agents, hopefully not at our firm, but agents across the country who are still going to use them. They are, because they're going to say that's what's best for my buyer. But they don't have the data to back that up. Unless they're getting every single competitive offer they've ever entered into, I don't know how they can say those always work. And the risk is that possible fair housing exposure is just not worth the risk. So please, please, please stop using buyer love letters. If you would like to just talk on the phone with the listing agent about your client, talk about things like their amazing credit score, their large down payment they have, how they're very familiar with the neighborhood, how one of them works at the local restaurant, name some things that are not protected class details about your client. That's fine. You can say that. Donna was very successful with a purchase more than a year ago because she shared with the listing agent that these folks used to walk their dog around the block and look at this house. She did not disclose their gender. She did not disclose their race. She did not disclose their sexual orientation, none of those things. She just said they used to walk their dog past this house all the time and always thought that if it ever came on the market, they'd love to have it. That's a way to communicate with the listing agent, some sort of humanizing details about your buyer without treading over into protected class status, okay? Again, I would not put it in a letter. I would probably just call the listing agent and chat about it, okay? I think way more attention is coming to these buyer love letters in the future. And so as always, I want you guys to get out of them before they become a huge thing, or before you find yourself accidentally exposing your client to discrimination. Okay, we're going to move on to non-exclusive versus exclusive right to represent buyer forms. We're not going to actually be going over the form today. I want to talk in concepts to you. I want to talk about what are the difference in them, how do they protect you or not protect you, and what are the strategies for using those forms. So for years and years now, buyers agents have been, or I should say realtors, have been obligated to have their agency relationship with a client documented in writing as soon as you have the first substantive conversation about a specific property. Okay, I would say substantive does not include details that are public record. So how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the price of the house is. I would not say that those are substantive conversations. Okay, I would even argue that walking through a house is not a substantive conversation, because those pictures are online. They could see them online, but better to get this signed earlier rather than later so that you can comply with the law, but also so you can protect yourself as a buyer's agent. So substantive conversations in my interpretation would be things like, do you have any idea how old the roof is? And then I'm going to reach out and I'm going to talk to the listing agent about how old the roof is. Do you know if they would take less? Do you know what other homes in the neighborhood have been selling for? Those are not, that's not public record. That's going to take some of my real estate expertise to find those things out. So at that point, we're having a substantive conversation about a specific property. I'm not talking about the real estate market in general. I'm actually talking about a specific property. So in this case, I feel like we have stepped over into agency. So now it is time for me to document that in writing with my buyer. So I have a choice between the exclusive right to represent buyer form and the non-exclusive right to represent buyer form. A little known fact is that a buyer can actually have multiple exclusive right to represent buyer agreements going at the same time. What that form says is that buyer will exclusively work with that agent, and then you detail what the purpose is. So there's an agent at Smith Mountain Lake, and she and I will give each other, we will share leads. We will share a client if the client is looking for both Roanoke and Smith Mountain Lake. So she and I each have an exclusive right to represent buyer form signed with these buyer clients. And the purpose of that exclusive, there's a line for purpose. It looks different on each of ours. Mine says a home in the Roanoke Valley. Hers says a home at Smith Mountain Lake or its surrounding area. Okay, so they can actually have an exclusive right to represent buyer agreement signed with both of us. And if they decide to buy a Smith Mountain Lake property through me, they will be in violation of that exclusive right to represent buyer agreement, because they exclusively are buying Smith Mountain Lake properties through her, and vice versa. If she were to show them a house in Roanoke and they decide to buy it and they wrote it up with her, they'd be in violation of my exclusive right to represent buyer form. More commonly, this may be that someone is maybe searching for Christiansburg and Salem because they're both right on the interstate. They may have a New River Valley agent working for them in the New River Valley MLS, and they may have a Roanoke agent working with them in the Roanoke MLS. So they can have two exclusive right to represent buyer forms at the same time. Now, the non-exclusive right to represent buyer form is really more lax. So it just says that the buyer may buy through you, or they may not buy through you. And the responsibilities and the obligations are much looser than on the exclusive right to represent buyer form. My preference is for you to be entered into an exclusive right to represent buyer form with your buyer, because it provides the most protection for you, the agent. So sometimes, or all the time, it can be awkward to ask for them to sign something when you've just met them. So my recommendation would be, you could enter into a non-exclusive right to represent buyer form that's just dated for 2 weeks. The period is just 2 weeks long, and just say to them, hey, Let's just try this out for 2 weeks. Let's see if you like me, I like you, and I'm providing you the level of service that you're looking for. They're going to sign that much more easily than an exclusive right to represent buyer form. But I want you to flip them into an exclusive right to represent buyer form soon. Because we did have we did have an agent, and you're going to cry for this agent. They had always written non-exclusive right to represent buyer agreements. So that's what they had. The buyer bought through a different agent, and our agent called me to say, what can I do? I think I'm procuring cause. They have a buyer's agreement with me, all of that. When we got down to the nitty gritty, this agent did not really have a leg to stand on. It was a non-exclusive right to represent buyer form. My only advice to them at the tail end of the conversation was, well, you certainly can call the agent who's writing the offer and see if they would make an agreement to issue you a referral fee. Now, keep in mind that agent doesn't have to. You have a non-exclusive right to represent that buyer. It's if the buyer decides to let you write it up, the buyer will let you write it up. So I shared with that agent that what I would recommend would be to do a short-term non-exclusive right to represent buyer form. And I understand, sometimes the client is out of town. You haven't even met them in person and you're asking them to sign something. But I want the agents to be aware that a short-term non-exclusive right to represent buyer form relationship should be replaced very quickly, as soon as is not awkward, with an exclusive, or as soon as you start doing some real legwork. I'm not going to drive an hour away to show houses and not enter myself into an exclusive right to represent buyer form. If I'm going to make that commitment, and I got a lead today, last night, I had somebody email me and they said, we're going to be looking in your surrounding areas. We noticed you had a lot of nice reviews online. We'd like to know if you'd be interested in helping us. First off, yes, people, get those reviews in. Every client you've ever worked with, even if they haven't bought a house through you yet, get a review. Nobody said they have to close on a house before they can give you a review. There's no reason why buyers you're working with right now can't hop on Realtor and Zillow and say, she has been an absolute delight to work with so far. Her communication has been excellent. And I'm looking forward to, walking through a transaction with her. They can give you reviews that do not have to do with closing on a house. So get the reviews. I only have this lead because of my Realtor.com and Zillow reviews. Shout out to Rebecca Hartley of Hartley Closings, who asks for reviews from my past clients every time I close a transaction. She is excellent about that. That is an area where I had a large weakness. I would give them a closing gift at the closing table, thank them, and then I would say to myself, you got to get a review, Ashley, and I would never do it. So hiring Rebecca as a transaction coordinator for each of my closings meant somebody was following up and saying, hey, we hope you had as pleasant of an experience as we did representing you. If you so feel moved, it would really benefit Ashley if you would give her a review on these 2 sites. And she puts the links right in the email. So that is what has built up my reviews online and really beefed up my online presence. And here is proof that I got a lead literally just on they're looking at realtors in the area and liked the reviews that I had. So absolutely worth hiring Rebecca as a transaction coordinator, or you making sure you're asking for those reviews. I got another lead. A couple of years ago based on my bio on either Realtor or Zillow. My bio talked about how I'm in business with my dad. And then my last little bit of my bio was something like just trying to make her dad proud every day. She literally hired me because she said she had such a close relationship with her dad. And she appreciated that was, so you bet your bottom dollar, I took my dad with me when I went in for that appointment. And she ate him up, loved him. And so the whole time I was like, God, Dad, please don't say anything that's, embarrassing, please, So your bio and your reviews really do help. And that's completely free, y'all. That cost me no money. These 2 leads I've gotten now cost no money. So, Lord, y'all, I got off track. So let's back that bus up. So I was saying, all right, somebody remind me, what in the world was I talking about? I was talking about our agent who had a non-exclusive and was not able to claim a commission on or help the buyers when they decided to buy something. Okay, well, we're going to move on to more information about non-exclusive and exclusive. So if you would like a copy of either of these already filled out, we have those. Again, I do not want your non-exclusive right to represent buyer form to be for more than 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you need to have warmed up that hot lead, because if they are talking to you about specific properties, they are a hot lead, not a cold lead. You have warmed them up to talking about price range, search criteria. You should already within 2 weeks have them rolled into a saved search on MLS, a subscription, perhaps a portal, and you should have them in your CRM already. And you should be having daily or every other day conversations with them. So non-exclusive, if it's just awkward, this doesn't even get into the disclosure of brokerage for an unrepresented party. That's going to be for somebody who just refuses to sign anything. So if they refuse to sign anything, you're supposed to get them to sign that form that just says, hey, I'm just letting you know that I'm representing the seller until I represent you, because we are a sub-agent until we represent the buyer exclusively. So even though I'm not the listing agent, I'm a sub-agent of that seller until the buyer wants to sign an exclusive or non-exclusive right to represent buyer agreement with me. So I would argue that if you're trying to get somebody to sign a disclosure of brokerage for an unrepresented party, if they want to stay an unrepresented party while y'all search for homes, handle them carefully, because that is probably somebody who is working a lot of realtors and reaching out to lots of listing agents, and that one might bite you. So do what you can to just over the top communicate with them and try to get them to understand that you are the source of information. You are the one who's going to get back to them quickly, and try to convert them into a buyer who's invested in you as their agent, rather than working a lot of buyer's agents or listing agents. Okay. Who has questions about non-exclusive versus exclusive right to represent buyer forms? I know I went down a rabbit trail there a minute ago. If you have a question about that too, just let me know. I will tell you, I don't use non-exclusive right to represent buyer forms. I don't. I just love bomb my people with so much like attention and communication that then when I say, hey guys, I'd like to formalize this, and this is a form that allows me to work for you only, and it allows me to be your agent. It also allows me to be paid. And I tell them that because I am very transparent about how I get paid. I think it's important for the buyers to know. If they're a brand new buyer, they may not even know if they're going to have to pay me or not. I always tell them that they are paying me, but they're paying me through their offer to the seller. And that if the numbers don't work for the seller, we won't get the house. And that the seller functionally is paying me, but that they are truly paying me through the seller. This is what that whole Department of Justice court case is about right now. It's about, I've never said, hey, you can have me for free. I can work for you for free, because that never felt right to me. It felt a little bit like I was tricking them. So I never used that kind of language, but that's just me. I know lots of agents like to use that as a sort of a grab to try to get new buyers. But for me, that just never felt terribly authentic. So I never really used that language. And now I am almost positive we're going to be banned from using that type of language about how you can have a realtor for free, you can have a buyer's agent for free. We're not going to be able to say for free, because it's not true. So the Department of Justice case is going to change the way we do some things. I do not think it's going to be catastrophic. I do not think it's going to be devastating to our industry, but I do think we're going to change some of our language and some of our marketing techniques. And that might not be a bad thing. So I am very open and honest with my buyers about how I get paid, and that this form is what allows me to be paid. They don't mind. They expect me to be paid. Nobody is surprised that I'm not doing this as a hobby. Okay. So I've never had anybody get that be off-putting to them. So if nobody has any questions, we're going to move on to wire fraud. I know we talk about it a lot, but I want to just hammer on it a little bit more. All right. So we have an agent at the firm who graciously shared her own experience with wire fraud a couple of weeks ago in one of our new agent training classes, and it was just depressing. Wire fraud is getting scarier and trickier. I was talking to a lender a couple of days ago, and they had a situation where someone was attempting to commit wire fraud on one of their buyer clients. And this lender saw a copy of the email with his own company's, letterhead on it. And he was gobsmacked at how real all of it looked, how real the language looked, how real the letterhead and the logo and everything looked. So there is no requirement for a scammer to have one thing different. Okay. They don't have to have, some sort of telltale thing that lets you know it's fake. Most of the time, they're not even in this country. So they wouldn't even be bound by the United States fraud, requirements. So they can make it look as real as they want to make it look. And let me tell you, this lender was saying how real it was. Now, fortunately, this lender had made sure that the clients knew to call and talk to one of them live on the phone to confirm wire instructions. So they caught it then, and it didn't go through. But lots and lots of them are getting passed, and lots are lots and lots of fraud is being committed, and your money's gone. It is super depressing. So as a best business practice, I just want to remind you again that you should be communicating. It should be in one of your draft emails that goes to your buyers. Do not use any wire instructions you receive without calling, say Allison at Homestead Settlement, Leanne at Performance Title. Name the closer and say, do not share any wire instructions you have received with your bank until you have called this closer at this settlement company and verbally over the phone confirmed the wire instructions. Okay. This really, really needs to happen. This is way too important of a transaction piece to just wing it and hope that what you got is correct. I would rather you be a little paranoid. No one's going to get upset that you're being paranoid about the wire instructions. So does anyone have anything to ask about wire fraud or share a story? I hope nobody else has been victim to it.
How do they scam you? How do they even know what's going on?
So I don't know if they're intercepting emails and know a transaction is happening. People are getting hacked all the time. So the letters look really real, and they just are wire instruction letters. It's just a letter from a lender or a letter from a settlement company giving the wire instructions. So it has to be that somebody has been hacked, and then they see in emails that someone has a transaction going. And all it would take is to hack or have a Trojan on a computer somewhere where you're seeing the client's emails, and they would know all of the transaction details. They would know all of that information. And it did happen to one of our real estate agents,
and Anastasia, it was with, the hack was through, they were impersonating the closing company's information.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sick.
It is.
And it email looked like it came from the closing office.
To another closing office. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I know it's horrendous. And this is why I'll also tell you, stop closing things on Fridays. Close them on Thursdays. That way there's still another business banking day if wire fraud happens to try to stop payment or get the money back. If you're closing on Fridays now, by Monday when the banks open back up, it is gone forever because it gets transferred so quickly through bank accounts. So don't close on Fridays anymore. Close Thursday or earlier. And that just gives you a prayer to, plus when you close on Fridays, everybody's in more of a hurry. Everything is like hustle, hustle, hustle. Let's get it to the closing table because we got to record today. Some of that pressure is relieved when you close a little earlier in the week. Rushing makes mistakes happen. So, just don't close on Fridays anymore. I don't know when we decided that we have to close on Fridays so that the buyers don't own the house for an extra day before they can start moving in because of their work schedule. It's probably like $45 in mortgage payment. Like, they're not out anything much. So close earlier in the week. I know we all want to be maximum efficiency and close on Friday and hand them the keys, and then it records an hour later. And then it's 5 p.m. and they can start moving in and take full advantage of the whole weekend. Just close on a Wednesday or a Thursday. It would solve a lot of issues, especially issues with closings getting slightly delayed. And now it's not going to close until Monday. And now the entire weekend is blown and the seller won't give early possession, and they won't even give early possession for you to put the contents in the garage. And now everything's sitting on the moving truck for the whole weekend. Just close on Wednesday, y'all. Like I'm moving all my stuff to earlier than Friday. And I've been doing that for a while, and it has avoided a lot of issues, a lot of scheduling issues. Great. Open it up. Other questions? Yes, Anastasia, you got something else?
No, I just think that closers really appreciate when we don't schedule it on a Friday or on the last day of the darn month, because they get so slammed.
I know. They're prorating all that stuff anyway. Like, I don't understand the predilection to like close on the last day of the month or last Friday of the month. I don't know.
Something that's happening that I don't care for is I just started using a new title company, Virginia Title Center. They're
Okay,
fantastic.
Hold for 1 minute. As long as you're only going to say wonderful things, please continue. Otherwise, let me stop recording.
Oh, stop recording.
Okay.
Please.